Good evening.
Good evening.
Glad you all could be out here this evening. I'm going to start out tonight with a little bit of something a little bit different. I want you to close your eyes, and we're going to take a power nap. I'll let you know when to wake up. I want no snoring at all, okay? Okay, you should be well rested now, so I don't want to see any more, that slow drift down and then back up, and I don't want to see that tonight, okay? So now, can anybody here tell me who invented rest? God himself. God invented rest. In Hebrews 4, if you want to turn to chapter 4 of Hebrews 1 through 9, it tells us, "Therefore, since a promise remains of entering his rest, let us fear lest any of you seem to have come short of it. For indeed the gospel was preached to us as well as to them. But the word which they heard did not profit them, not being mixed with faith in those who heard it. For we who have believed do enter that rest, as he has said. So I swore in my wrath, they shall not enter my rest, although the works were finished from the foundation of the world. For he has spoken in a certain place of the seventh day in this way, and God rested on the seventh day from all his work. And again in this place, they shall not enter my rest. Since therefore it remains that some must enter it, and those to whom it was first preached did not enter because of disobedience." Again, he designates a certain day, saying in David, "Today, after such a long time, as it has been said, today if you will hear his voice, do not harden your heart. For if Joshua has given them rest, then he would not afterwards have spoken of another day. There remains therefore a rest for the people of God." There are some things that are kind of a surprise in life. What I mean by that is there are some things you just wouldn't expect. Take, for example, the idea of taste. Hey, God, that was a pretty nifty idea, I think. The idea of taking a bite of a chocolate bar is a breathtaking experience if you like chocolate. Or take the astonishing flavor of a T-bone steak. Or the amazing sensation eating an ice cream cone filled with real custard. It was all God's idea. And another thing that's really great about it is each and every one of these people in this room have a different taste for different things. We were just discussing that at the beginning of class, and it fits in perfectly here. It was all God's idea. Guacamole? Nah, I don't think so. I think that had to be an invention of Satan myself. God invented so many cool things. Everything from the Grand Canyon to the fabulous beams of sunlight streaming across an early morning sky. When we drive to church on Sunday and Wednesday evening, we take in some of the most breathtaking sunsets that you'll ever see. They're just incredible. When I worked at the hospital, I worked a shift that was 6 a.m. in the morning until 2:30. So I got there before the sun come up. And I used to go out at the edge. I made sure I was at where all the glass windows were on the side of the building, and you could see the sun coming up over the horizon and just the beautiful colors. And sometimes those sunsets that God paints on the way here, and you see that, you just say, man, I don't know how people cannot believe in God, in the artistry that he puts before us. God has invented hippos, elephants, puppy dogs, and cats. Ruthie and Pepper, both cats. Now I kind of think that Satan might have had something to do with Pepper, but Ruthie, she's a sweetheart. So, but they are really good companions, and we love them dearly. God is amazingly creative, and it was God who invented rest. Why did God invent rest? Well, rest. Why would God invent anything like rest. You and I have all experienced a kind of love-hate relationship with rest. When you were young and your parents wanted you to take a nap, you would lay there and fight off that sleep as if it were a mortal enemy. How many times have you observed a 3-year-old reacting to nap time? I've seen some kids who react to it. The idea of being put in bed is almost like their mother's going to boil them in oil like they do a 20-pound turkey on Thanksgiving. Now, when Liam, our grandson, he was young, he was just the opposite. He liked to lay down and take a nap. He would just go and lay down and take a nap on his own. And then during adolescence, you operate as if there was a switch in your head. It was on, you were moving at full speed with 115% power, and when it was off, you zonked out wherever you happened to run out of gas, and your parents would carry your limp body into the bedroom. And then came the teen years when your parents couldn't peel you out of bed with a pail of cold water and an air horn, and until at least the crack of noon. My mother used to throw water on me to get me out of bed to go to school. She used to make me so mad. And Mary, she had trouble getting me up for work too. It was just horrible. And then maybe if you attended college and had to do some all-nighters slamming for an exam or something, they got things like Red Bull and all that stuff. I've never tried that stuff. The caffeine really doesn't help me too much when I'm sleepy, but a lot of people drink that stuff like crazy. The world is so full of so many things to do, so few restrictions, and so little time. You hardly sleep at all until you crash for 2 to 3 days of semi-comatose exhaustion. Or there was the job I had in the steel mill. It was 12 p.m. to 8 a.m. This was one shift that I could never get used to. They say if you work it steady, you can get used to it, but I don't know. I just could never. I could sleep all day long till 5 or 6 o'clock, get up and go to work, and at 1 o'clock in the morning, I just couldn't even hold my eyes open. It was just horrible. Other guys, they really strived on it, but I just couldn't get used to it. My wife used to tell my kids, just leave your dad alone when he's on night turn, because all he is just a grumpy bear. As an adult, you find that sleep becomes a welcome acquaintance that you'd like to get to know it a lot better. I remember as a kid seeing old people taking a nap on Sunday afternoon and thinking, what a waste of time. Now, it just seems like such a good idea. In fact, I took a nap this afternoon. So, it just seems really strange how you change. And as I grew older, rest at times is difficult a thing to attain, really, because you got backaches, you got flare-ups of gout, you worry about your kids and your grandkids, and when you get right down to it, just life in general sometimes just will not let you shut off the outside world and be able to go to sleep. But doesn't the Bible tell us something about worry? But do we listen? Most of the time, we don't. So why? Why would God invent such a strange thing as rest? Certainly with respect to himself, he didn't need to rest. We know that he did on the seventh day after those 6 days of creation, but it wasn't because he was tired. And with respect to humankind, it was invented such nifty things as taste and vision, those kind of things. Just think about those for a minute. Certainly, he could have made us so that we didn't need rest. Yet the simple fact is that God designated us to need rest, and he has promised to supply our needs. God has written you a promissory note in Hebrews 4:1. Therefore, since the promise remains of entering his rest, let us fear lest any of you seem to have come short of it. People need rest. I have a story about rest I want to share with you. A game to rest. A father had 3 very active boys. One summer evening, he was playing cops and robbers in the backyard after dinner. One of the boys shot his father and yelled, "Bang, you're dead." He slumped to the ground, and when he didn't get right up, a neighbor ran over to make sure that he was not hurt in the fall. When the neighbor bent over The overworked father opened one eye and said, "Shh, don't call them over here. It's the only chance I get to rest all day." Rest is a wonderful thing. We need rest. But most of all, and most of us don't get enough of it, we're sleep deprived, overworked, on edge, and we live in a world of clocks, calendars, and deadlines. The to-do list never ends, and the frustration level rises as the pressure builds up. And on top of that, everyday activities of survival, there are worries and concerns for the people we love that causes us to toss and turn at night when we should be asleep. My kids and my grandkids are my main concern that I have when I lay down at night. I want them to all make it to heaven, along with the flock here. I want all of us to be there together. Let's face it, people are restless. There is something about us that is prone to worry and given to being anxious about all kinds of things. We're consumed by such concerns as our health, our finances, our kids, as I mentioned, our parents, our friends, our cars, our past, our future. In short, we worry about anything and everything. Perhaps that is why the promise of rest that the author of Hebrews speaks of is such a wonderful pledge. When you read that, God has made us a promise. God has promised us rest, and we all need it. Above all things, make sure you don't lose this wonderful rest that God has promised. For you see, remember, it can be lost. And I don't think there's going to be much rest in the other place. It's going to be plenty dark enough to rest, but there's not going to be much rest there. The promise of God must be combined with faith. Hebrews 4:2 reads, "For indeed the gospel was preached to us as well as to them, but the words which they heard did not profit them, not being mixed with faith in those who heard it." We have to mix the Word of God with our faith in order to be faithful to God to get that rest that He promised us. Take the Hebrews in the day of Moses and Joshua, for example. They heard the message about God's rest, but they never obtained it. God had promised them good news. They would be freed from the slavery of the Egyptian world, of toil and struggle for survival, and be brought through a desert into a place of rest across the Jordan River in the Promised Land. But Israel failed. They were made to wander in the desert for 40 years because they didn't have enough faith to know that I don't care if there were 10-foot people there. If God said He would help them get through that struggle and take that land, He would have helped them do it. All they had to do was have faith. We just heard about an event that happened not too long ago with Charles. They were doing a walk for water, and they ended up getting $8,500 to drill a well for people in Africa that were walking 4 miles round trip just to get clean water to operate their home. Now, when we go in the back into the bathroom in there, we turn the faucet on and it's just running free. Could you imagine living in a situation where you had to walk 4 miles round trip just to get the water to just sustain your life? Now let's look at the Israel of old in the days of Joshua. They failed to add faith to the promise when they came to the promised land. They were afraid and refused to go into the land. Without faith, there is no rest. We have to have faith. God's message of good news, God's gospel, is that He sent Jesus to us with the promise that someday we would have rest from all the turmoil that we're in now in this world. In the times past, it was a message sent through prophets and teachers of old. Today, that promise has been given to us through Jesus Himself, the very Son of God. But it is a promise that requires faith, your faith, in order to be of true value. The promise, however, wonderful it is not enough without our faith. But it goes beyond this. Our lack of faith causes God to be angry. Imagine that if you offered your child a great and wonderful gift that they decline because of their lack of appreciation, their lack of love and unwillingness to trust you. You're going to be put out, offended, and maybe angry enough to say, I'll never give them another gift like this. Basically, that's what God's telling us. Let's say you wanted to go to Hawaii, but you know you will probably never have the funds. But your grandmother said, I'm going to pay for your trip, but also I'm going to pay for your whole family, 30 plus people. Can you imagine if one of the members of your family had said, I don't want to go, just give me the money? Probably happened. How do you feel when you offer someone a gift that they turn away from as if it has no value at all? You, like me, will probably be offended. You have given of yourself, and the receiver has turned away from your gift. They, in rejecting the gift, reject you. And that's the same way God feels when we reject the gift of rest that He's promising us. Israel rejected God's gift by failing to combine the promise with faith, and God swore an oath, they will never enter my rest. That's why one whole generation wandered in the wilderness for 40 years. But what is this gift of rest for us? What is God's promise today? Hebrews 4:4 reads, For He has spoken in a certain place of the seventh day in this way, and God rested on the seventh day from all His work. In creation, God created the world in 6 days, and on the seventh day He rested. It's not that He was tired. Rest is more than simply regaining strength. Rest is about stopping work long enough to enjoy what you have created. And I think that's what God was doing. He was just marveling over what He had actually created. It's a principle that still stands today. I want to encourage you to take some time to have rest in your life that allows you to stop long enough to enjoy the fruit of your labor with the people that mean the most to you. In fact, we need to listen to this message today and tonight, and take it to heart, and keep it in our minds the rest of the time in our life. God rest is promised on a whole new day. Matthew 4:7 reads, Again, He designated a certain day, saying in David, Today, after such a long time, as it has been said, today you will hear His voice. Do not harden your hearts. In the fourth command, God ordained that His people would set aside the seventh day as a day of rest. God designed the whole world to need rest. He developed the idea of rest. Every 7 years, the fields were to be left to rest. Every seventh year, 49 years, the year of Jubilee, was to be declared, and all land was to revert back to the original owners, and all slaves were to go free. Found in Leviticus chapter 21. Even the farmers today rotate their crops for this purpose. That promise that God made to us, the gift of salvation and the promise of rest, remains steadfast today for us. Matthew 11:28 reads, Come to me, all you who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your soul. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. This is the rest of faith that Jesus promised in that verse I just read. The rest of Matthew 11:28 is salvation, and it is a gift that we receive by faith. The rest of Matthew 11:30 is what we find day by day as we take the yoke and surrender. I want to close with this poem. Once my hands were always trying hard to do my best. Now my heart is sweetly trusting, and my soul is all at rest. Once my life was full of effort, now it's full of joy and zest. Since I took His yoke upon me, Jesus gives to me His rest. And that was by A.B. Simpson. Jesus is the answer to our restlessness. to having a restless soul. He is our rest for all eternity. I know I'm preaching to the choir tonight, but if you have a need tonight to come forward to rededicate your life, we can pray with you. Or if you have the need to be baptized, we can do that for you. Remember, God promises that rest. And we know, as that power nap we took at the beginning, that was really nice, right? Come as we stand and sing.